You are listening to an MLGA Network podcast. Welcome to Voluntary Vixens, where Jessie and Maddie give a female voice to news and pop culture with a libertarian twist. Join us to stay informed and challenged while keeping it sane, peaceful, and most importantly, voluntary.
All right. Do you want to start, Maddie?
Sure. I guess since you handed it off to me so eloquently. But hey all, it's Maddie from Voluntary Vixens. Here's my co-host as usual, Jessie. And today we've got a super exciting, well, I'm super excited about it, but an awesome guest who we're so excited to let her just, tell her more about herself, and how awesome her show is. And yeah. Introverts unite. I'm so happy we're all here.
Well, I actually present as an extrovert, but yes. The debilitating anxiety I have after such presentations leads to my side gig, the cocktail blog, but whatever.
That makes more sense.
Monica Perez,
now.
Folks.
Right.
Welcome, Monica Perez.
Secret introvert.
Secret introvert. I know. I wouldn't have guessed that at all. I did not know. So for those of you listening and you don't know who Monica Perez is, shame on you. We actually, it's a relatively newish thing that I know who you are, but I'm very happy to have been introduced to you. Found you through the guys at Tinfoil Hat. So that might trigger some people listening. Tinfoil. But here's another trigger.
Oh
Monica.
My gosh, I go further.
Oh, yeah. I know. And it's great. You got to go back and, we got so much to teach Sam Tripoli about libertarianism and anarcho-capitalism.
Oh,
but
yes.
That's for another episode entirely. But so Monica is the host, one of two hosts. She hosts with her producer Binkley, but the Propaganda Report. And so I unironically thank you for your service, because you listen and watch and research all the news, and I don't have to, because it literally makes me sick.
Yeah, that's why I do it. I kept looking for it, and I was like, I can't find it anywhere. You telling me I have to do this myself? And I did because on the weekends I do a radio show on WSB, which takes callers. So I had to do it anyway because they would call. They listen to Rush all week. And then I say what I say, and they all gang up on me. So I just had to do all that research anyway. And I thought, I think I have to share this with the world. So then the podcast was born, and the Daily Show is kind of relatively new. So no shame on not knowing that or any of it. But once that I started doing that, I realized that there was a need for just like news without spin. Because the news is sick enough. It makes you sick enough. But then the spin will just make you crazy. Because even like if you lean left or lean right and you hear Wolf Blitzer being like, it's time for war. And Fox like saying, don't mind that $1 trillion deficit. It's like, but I thought
we don't have to care this time.
Yeah, just at least lie to me the way I like to be lied to.
It is brutal. Either way.
I will admit, I have tried multiple times this week to try and watch the impeachment stuff going on, and I just cannot. It's just watching Adam Schiff on there. It just kills me.
I can't do it, actually.
I have to do it.
Either like do 2 times speed on YouTube, or I'll just like read the Wall Street Journal, because they'll tell you all the propaganda, and then you can just see where they're going. Because it's such a tell anyway. I'm like, I don't even care what they're saying. I just want to know what we're supposed to believe, which is what they tell you. And they like consolidate it for you. So then you can be just like, oh, I know what's happening tomorrow. I mean, I literally said there's going to be a bombshell. And Binkley was like, Bolton. I was like, maybe. That was a week ago. But I thought it was going to be later. I thought it was going to be so that you get like 19 Republicans crossing the aisle to vote for conviction. And he gets away with it, whatever. He's not convicted by 1 vote. Like, I'm actually predicting that still. But Bolton bombshell, I believe, was like a tomorrow's headline last week.
There's still time.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's just 1.0. Oh, I'm sure we'll get there.
I know. Yeah. I listened to your drive time news blast from today, and so yeah, like, thanks for catching me up on it.
Yeah, I
the whole
tried.
thing
It's like 30 minutes. You should be able to take that. We try to curse and stuff so that it's like at least somewhat amusing.
Oh, for sure. Amusing and also horrifying because
horrifying. I know. It's
it really
horrifying.
is
I'm
frightening
sorry.
what's going
and
on
it
in the world,
scares
everyone.
people. Like people like think I'm a bummer. I'm like, I'm totally not a bummer. Like I don't
You're
even.
not.
I think you've got to just. If you're worried about the outcome of that thing, yes, you should be bummed. But just make sure you can hug your kids, make a delicious craft cocktail. I don't know. It's probably good to be able to grow a potato just in case stuff really hits the fan. But I don't think that's that hard.
Yeah, definitely. Because I don't know. This 2020 started off with a bang. I mean, it literally started off with a bang.
Yes. I was kind
and
of
it just
World
has
War
not slowed
III.
down.
I was hashtag World War III there for a while, and like Virginia gun rally, false flag, hashtag
Like, Boogaloo. Yeah.
We're getting set up here.
I know. I don't know. No, one of the things that I've been following a lot is the coronavirus stuff in China and what all has been going on with that. I'm a nurse, so one of the things that I was thinking, well, probably the fact that all the people in China are getting hit so hard could have a lot to do with the fact that the air quality is just awful there. The food and the conditions of everything is not up to where we are used to it. So they're exposed to all kinds of things all the time. Their immune systems are constantly fighting off something. So yeah, they're probably weakened already from all the stuff that's going on there anyways.
You want to go right down the rabbit hole right now? You ready?
Let's do it.
Yes.
Okay. So did you ever hear of Nancy Turner Banks?
No.
Nancy Turner Banks. She's a doctor. She wrote a book. She's written several books. One of them is called The End of the AIDS Cancer Paradigm, something like that. She's interesting. You should plug into her. I think she went to Harvard Medical School, but she's probably not welcome there anymore. I don't know. But you can go, her thing, I think it was Pellagra, whatever that's called. I don't know. But she talks about outbreaks, about disease outbreaks being kind of like environmental, nutritional coincident. So like when everybody gets sick at once, this idea, in her case, she talks about AIDS and cancer, like they're just giving you the wrong idea. Like, and my brother supposedly died of AIDS, but I realized that he really died of AZT poisoning. Which is what he thought he was dying. He had no symptoms whatsoever. And he said, they gave me that medicine and I think it's killing me. So I'm going to stop taking it. But it did kill him and nobody dies of it anymore since they stopped giving people AZT.
Oh my God.
So she's like, that's not a virus and blah, blah, blah. That's kind of interesting. But this idea that these viral outbreaks are not, they're not just strictly, at the very least, they might not even be viruses like in that case, but at the very least, they're not this like uniformly contagious thing where everybody is vulnerable to it and needs to be in a complete panic and have to be, I like to say my goal is not to be independently wealthy, but it's to be independently healthy. Like I never want to have to plug into the system like that ever. And they want you to feel like you have to. And we just said today on the show, like, if you tell people that something's out there and it's everywhere, and then you tell them you have a vaccine and then nobody gets it, it looks like your vaccine works. But it doesn't, you don't necessarily, everybody doesn't necessarily, it maybe didn't at all. Like it's a really funny
like a false
thing.
positive.
It could be. Yeah, exactly. Proving negative. Like it's possible. You never know. And even when you go back with the flu, there are ideas that, I mean, lots of different ways to think of it, but that sanitation itself or contagion or a misunderstanding of it, or it was something else entirely, because they say like that flu killed everybody back then.
Yeah, well, that's another thing about the flu is that what they found that like vitamin D is correlated with the flu, and that's why people are so susceptible to it in the wintertime because there's less light. They don't get as much sunlight or vitamin D. And then, of course, like babies and elderly are going to be who you look for because they're the ones that are not definitely going to get like the least amount of vitamin D. So they say
that's very interesting, that vitamin D connection, because I was thinking that they used to tell me when I had toddlers that they got sick in the winter because they weren't going outside. They were playing in ball pits at the mall.
Yeah,
but now
that's
have
probably true
teenagers.
too.
Yeah, that may be true, but I have teenagers. They're not playing in ball pits. They're completely isolated on their own personal devices, and they still get the illnesses in the winter. And I just could not figure it out. But because we don't even have exposure to it. So that's interesting. But I just feel like the problem is with how I look at the world, and I really try not to, but I always get back to it because the deeper you dig, the more you get to this place, which is I really do not believe that our systems, our media, our governments, whatever, are operating according to the principles we think they're operating on. They're not actually working for us. They don't want to inform us. They're really working against us, the pathocracy. So it's very hard to get information that I have to like regress to like the pre-scientific era where I must observe personally something happening for me to believe it. And then actually you can get a lot out of that. Like when it comes to health and stuff, you can put together the pieces if you're observant and self-aware and everything. But I mean, it's like doing the news. It's like me reading you the news. Like you're very happy that I'm doing it for you because everybody can't do it all.
Everybody can't do it all. That is true.
You guys have to help us be independently healthy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely one of the things that just, because my husband is half Chinese too, and he's always wanted us to move to China and like, get our kids into the culture and all that stuff, which is something that he wished that he had the opportunity to do. And I'm thinking, let's just wait on that for a while.
Have you been to China?
No, he has been back in college. He went on like with his class for like a trip, and he was there for 2 months, and so it was a really fun trip for him. But I'm thinking you probably didn't really get to see.
Probably really romanticized.
Yeah, I was going to say,
China.
like, is it? Did he think it was cool or did he think it was good? Actually, I have a good friend of mine. Her parents are Chinese from China, pre-Mao. They're old. She's my age. And she would say, like, you don't understand, like, Chinese American is not the same as American. I'm like, and so she decided to move to China to work for a couple of years. And I was like, you're American. She was just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get killed on the escalator. Nobody understands. You just have to push. Everybody's smoking in your face whenever you can't get a decent cheeseburger. I was like, I told you were American. So the
personal
thing is,
space is a big thing. They like to sit all really close together and eat, and they are very loud eaters too. Which I was saying this in a private group. I hope I didn't sound like a racist, but I mean, Chinese people, that's how they, like, if they are enjoying their food, they'll open mouth, like slop everything.
Their kids, when people come over, when they emigrate from other countries to this country, the kids are American. Like it totally, I don't think there's any bigger thing. It's just that culture has that thing. And that's why I'm just saying, like, did he ever live there? Did you ever live there? Because it's a cultural difference. Like, I think people like New Zealand, maybe New Zealand appeals to like an American sensibility. I don't know, but I'm not convinced on China. Like, I think Hong Kong would have, but they're fucking it up. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was one thing I said. I was like, we can go to Hong Kong. And the thing that's weird about that is his dad is actually, he escaped communism. Like he swam from mainland China to Hong Kong. And so I'm thinking like, maybe you need to sit down and talk to your dad a little bit more about going back to China.
They say that there was a real purge, like that Great Leap Forward where they killed tens or 100 million people under Mao, that it literally changed the culture, that the people who were killed, it was almost like snap evolution thing where the people who were killed, it's like the Hungarian Revolution or the Shia uprising in 1991 in Iraq, and I worry if that's what we're doing to Iran, is that you're getting everybody to come out and say, oh, I'm a free thinker. I'm going to stand up for myself. I have a gun. And they're just like, oh, great. Yeah. Come to the square, so my friend's parents draw a line between people who came over before Mao. Like I'm saying, like people who were raised in this country or this culture, regardless of where their parents came from. That's what this is. It's like if they're there after, they have a different culture. So maybe his dad wouldn't even recognize it. And plus Hong Kong is different and Taiwan is different because those are people who self-selected to do that crazy stuff also.
Well, I know that his dad, he doesn't speak English very well because even though he lives here in America now, everybody that he knows is people from China that used to live like in the village and around. So I think I think that speaks volumes, because I mean, he does have a house back in China and he has gone back and forth, but when it came to the date that he was actually they live up in Pittsburgh. Well, they used to. He sold his house in Pittsburgh and he was going to move. He decided to move to Las Vegas instead.
Nice. Good point. But I have to say, there's something about that I really like. And when my grandparents all came over to this country, two of them came from Ireland. One was German, and then the fourth one was Syrian. And her parents brought her over as a baby, or had her on the boat or something like that. And the mother died. And the father was like, I cannot hack this country, especially with the baby. So he left her in an orphanage here and he went back to Syria.
Wow.
And those days, that organic immigration, it was cultural self-selection. So this is I consider our culture to be a consumer culture, a material culture. Like it's just a money culture. It's a work culture, work ethic culture, all that. That's what it is. So it doesn't matter where you came from. If you're choosing it, it's something you could choose. And they did choose it. But now they have this like human rights industry where they intentionally like I have a friend from Sweden who's actually here right now. And the immigrants are from Iraq and Somalia. Now there's a civil war in Ukraine, like a couple miles over the water, and they could have somebody culturally closer, and this isn't like a border wall issue. It just gives the lie to all that. I believe they do it in order to create culture clash. So like his community, they could have their own little culture, their food, their everything, but they're here for a good reason. And they're staying. And my guess is they are not having a lot of conflict.
Right. Yeah.
I could be wrong.
No, I mean, I think that for the most part, I mean, he met Phil's mom when she worked in the restaurant that he was cooking in. They met at a Chinese restaurant. She's American, German, Irish, all American girl. Yeah. So he did. I think in his mind, he's like, I did that. I tried that. That's too American for me, but I don't want to leave, So when he remarried, he married a Chinese woman and just stuck with her friends and his friends. And they opened a restaurant in Pittsburgh together, and, retired off of that. I love the
evolution of it. And it upsets me that politics has to encroach on my principles. So I'm a libertarian. I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I don't believe in borders, but I also know when I'm being set up and having like the North American Union is not getting us closer to a voluntary society. I can tell you that right now.
It's not.
So it's a bit of a setup, and it makes you, I mean, there's a conflict. You can't, the purity of your values, you can either just abandon the system, which is fine, or you can, I decided, because I got that radio show, and it was kind of pointless to be like, hey man, I'm just abandoning the system. Or else my entire radio career would have been 1 minute, which would have been fine. Like I don't think I'm accomplishing anything except for what I did decide to focus on, which is the Bill of Rights. I feel like I'd rather kick the can. I got kids. And I focus on the Bill of Rights, and that I think if you educate people, they come, no matter who's coming from, wherever, they should be able to understand that. And I think they would. It does get bastardized a bit, but there's just either, it's my only way of not compromising is just focusing on the Bill of Rights, which I do believe you can be kind of uncompromising because it's a defense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, that's it's one of those things where I think that's where women like us, or libertarians to our degree, anarcho-capitalists, those that don't believe that any real state is
necessary or just,
well, any of the above, like all of the above, and all of that combined, because it kind of goes hand in hand and ends up working out together. But so, I mean, it is one of those things where it's like, okay, well, what do we have? What are we living in? And where are we today? And so I think like when I do I love hearing your perspective and how your background and your knowledge of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and being able to take your anarcho-capitalist perspective and inject that into okay, well, so, in our perfect world, we'd at least be following this document. And
I like
not.
to
So let's get back to this document
to their
at the
rules.
at the very least,
yes.
if you want to pretend that this document means so much to you, let's
you know
read
what?
it.
Everybody was reading off of that same page when Obama was president, because I'm on a regular all talk radio is basically conservative, and you can be libertarian, or they if you're like a hardcore conservative but you believe in abortion. I think that's what the libertarians are that they say on radio a lot of times. I'm like, it's just not religious. No, so they think I'm maybe that. They don't realize they actually do know that I call myself an anarcho-capitalist, and I think it makes them think of me as a novelty act. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. Let Monica say, let Monica just be this
ah.
anarcho-capitalist. There she goes.
Right, but then I would surprise people, because I would explain to them what I thought the Constitution said on its face. It's not because I'm a constitutional scholar. I just can read English, and it just didn't change that much.
It's very straightforward.
And when it was Obama, everyone was like, here, 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 cheers for the girl, And then now everybody's like, oh, at least every single conversation that gets to the end is, are you saying you wish it was Hillary? And I'm
oh my God.
Maybe, because then maybe you'd be defending the Constitution.
Yeah.
It is one of those things. It is one of those things that right after he won, and even before he won, I've said before, I didn't think he was going to win, because I didn't think they were going to let him win. I don't know how it happened. The Matrix broke something. Somehow he got it.
No, he's in on it. But whatever.
I know, that is your thought, and it scares me too.
Sure.
So.
For sure. They did what they want. They got globalism.
Yeah. So
yes.
That's what it is. It's that so, you can always count on count on a war with the Democrat, but always count on the deficit growing with the Republicans.
The contrary law of democracy. The contrary law of democracy. That's my, I coined it.
And then is it Tom Woods or is it Scott Horton's law that no matter who you vote for, you always get John McCain?
I thought that was. I think that might be Scott Horton, but I'm not sure.
Be Scott Horton.
That's fantastic. I gotta write that one down.
Yeah, don't forget that.
Yeah.
But
what was it? Somebody said yesterday when Kobe Bryant passed away, they were like, "Man, I just wish John McCain died again."
Oh man,
it was
why?
so
I don't get it. Because
I don't know. I guess because so many people were so split. Some sides were like, yay, he died, he was a rapist, and then some were like, oh no, my life is
Kobe
falling
Bryant.
apart.
Yeah. No, I was like, John McCain was a rapist?
Oh no. Well, as far as I know, he's not, or he wasn't.
Whatever. I think
that was one of the few things he did not do.
I'd sooner vote for a rapist. Honestly, you can only really do that one at a time.
Yeah, you can't mass rape. You can't drop rape bombs. You can commit mass murder. That's very true. Maybe that should be the title of the show.
Should we be laughing?
Oh my God, I'm wrestling with my cat right now. Howard.
I love the cat.
Oh, this is Howard.
Oh, hello, Schmoop. Oh, she can't hear me.
It's a he, and he's a
he. He's pretty big.
He's a pain in the ass.
I like his little handlebar mustache there.
I named him after Ayn Rand's character, Howard Rourke.
Oh, nice. Is his name Rourke or Howard?
Howard.
Howard. He really looks
totally
more like a Howard. I liked Howard Rourke because he was flawed.
Yeah.
He married that twit when he was young, but he stuck with her. Right? Oh, no. Was Howard Rourke the architect? I'm thinking of Hank Reardon. I'm thinking of Hank Reardon.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Hank Reardon. I liked Hank Reardon better than Howard Rourke.
Yeah, different book.
I was an Atlas Shrugged person, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I still have yet to read Atlas Shrugged. I actually
because I read it first.
I did
never
too.
Read it first because it's really the same book, so you don't have to read the. Well, I shouldn't.
You should read them all.
That's not true. Yeah.
But I would say I also started with Atlas Shrugged, kind of accidentally. Just was like, oh, this is the iconic book. I'll read that. Everyone.
It's very readable. They're real page turners.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll say, and I kind of ended with her first fiction book, We the Living.
Oh,
and
that was great.
Whoa.
Whoa,
And
I mean,
I
I
need to
still
read
have
that one, too.
no spoilers, but
No spoilers, but
I like have
read that
graphic
book.
visual images of the
Jesse,
climactic
start with that
moments.
one. Start with
Well,
that
I've
one.
read
So
The Fountainhead and Anthem.
Okay.
So
We the Living, you'll just whip right through. It was short.
yeah. Anthem was fast, so I don't know. I have like 3 different books that I'm trying to read right now. It's just insane.
My life.
Can't help you with that. I can only read them one page at a time because I fall asleep. Until I got this book, should have been the driest book in the world. And this is when my husband is just like, I really thought you were just a party girl. I don't know. This book is really good. It's called Western Media and the Ukraine Crisis, a study in, I don't know, propaganda, war propaganda, something like that. And but it was very well written. And he just talks about how like the mainstream media completely misrepresented everything that happened in Ukraine with respect to Russia, like just flip the script, and it has no basis in reality. And he's like quoting the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post as just complete and utter lies, which I had been following along, but it's nice to get it and now it's so relevant anyway. Yeah.
Actually, that sounds
I'll
like
have
a really
to read
good
that.
resource.
It's really good. It's not a page turner like We the Living, but it's good because right now, when you look back, it was written in 2017, but it was like about 2014. And it goes into like what was really happening behind the scenes and how misreported it was. So it's not really a narrative, but I can't believe the guy's still alive. I kind of have a watch on. See if he gets into it.
I hope he lives on an island or something. Yeah.
No, he's like a professor in Virginia. I'm like, dude.
Oh, man. Well, no wonder Governor Northam's trying to take their guns.
And he got him. See, that's the thing. That's the funny thing is that they were like, oh, this rally was great. Now go home because we're going to be there in a minute or two.
Thanks for showing up, everyone.
I know.
Yeah.
And people think it was good, and it still happened.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I guess
I think the laws had already passed.
Oh, well, I think wasn't it like they voted the next day or something?
Yeah,
the voting was like the next day.
Someone tweeted me the vote tally, and it was clearly a victory for gun control. Like he sent me all the things, but I didn't like look at the timeline. I didn't research it, but from what I understand, all those laws are now laws.
Victoria,
maybe I got to do more
disappointing.
Mm-hmm. Well, who knows? I mean, how did all those people vote for that government? And when 91 of the 95 counties call themselves sanctuaries, Second Amendment sanctuaries, they had just elected these people. Maybe I got to dig more.
Well,
do you think that
I
laws?
I do think like a lot of the I don't know that. I mean, either way, I mean, like the fact that it's so different from like I guess what the results of the votes and who ended up in office and who actually is in Virginia as a Virginian. I really think there's
I thought of that. Mega counties that are full of urban people might have an overwhelming impact on the vote. And then if those 91 counties really amount to 49% of the population, it's a game. Or people could have lied or whatever, didn't show up the day of the vote, which that would be a little rough.
Yeah.
Which that could be true too.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of this just plugs into the new crisis of democracy. So they're trying they're trying to get us. That's why I'm suspicious of the constitutional convention that some people want. I just don't think that some people say the way to get like a balanced budget amendment or us to restore the Constitution is to have a convention like of the states.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if I trust that outcome either. No,
never. I like
definitely worse.
The paper is useless, but at least we can all point. They've got to argue, and they care so much about what we think. That's why they put so much effort into it, in my opinion, the media and everything. So that piece of paper, I think, has real value.
Yeah,
they want to get rid of it, I think.
Yeah. It is crazy how much effort, like you said, they do put into trying to brainwash us from every single step of the way. And
every step of the way.
I was literally just watching this pretty trashy Netflix show, and so I can't remember, you mentioned something on your show the other day. It was you and Binkley talking about like how much of a propaganda rag HBO is, basically everything there. And then, I mean, I had to know it was coming, but finding out about Homeland, I did used to watch.
Oh, yes.
And I do watch it, but it did change. It like it used to be first couple seasons.
Well, they get you in
excellent.
that way.
Yeah.
They get you in.
But I guess like if I heard Binkley correctly, it sounded like around season 4 is when the CIA basically took over the screenwriting. And so
was like 3 or 4 years ago? I mean, that was 3 or 4 years ago,
a while ago. Like a chunk
he was saying 2016 is when he was reading some of that stuff. I don't know.
Okay.
But those kind of shows, I might have liked it in the beginning. People will tell me like, you will love this show, How to Catch or like Creating a Murderer was one of them or something like that, or The Making of a Murderer. Yeah. And I won't watch them because I'm absolutely certain that they're limited hangouts and that it will drive me and anyone in the room with me freaking crazy when I'm like, that's not what the Constitution actually says. He's not commander in chief unless called into actual service. Like the whole premise of this episode is wrong, you know. And then like John Q, he's blowing up the hospital because his son can't get medical care because he doesn't have insurance. Or like Breaking Bad. I loved Breaking Bad and I did tolerate it. But he was a public school teacher and he had, I mean, it's ridiculous. But that's how they propagandize the whole world. But I'm a terrible, again, this is where the cocktail blog comes in because the only way I can sit there, I'm really down to Rick and Morty and The Witcher. Those are the two things that I really, really like. And they tell, I know. Well, my 14-year-old son was like, he bought me, this is terrible. For Christmas, he bought me shot glasses with The Witcher on it. And I'm just like, okay, there's so many things wrong with this. First of all, Mommy doesn't do shots. Mommy does not do shots. And who's The Witcher? So then I had to watch The Witcher and I love it. But it requires some shots for sure. It's not the deepest stuff. I love it though. Anyway, I can't watch stuff that people think I would like because I know, I'm ruined. Those scales just got ripped from my eyes and I can't
I can't watch many things. I can't listen to many things. I can't follow certain people, certain musicians. I'm just like, I don't want to hear anything that they're saying.
Now you want to not like the musicians. Please don't. Oh, sorry. My mother's like, just don't say the Lord's name in vain. I don't care if you cuss. I don't care about any of that. Well, actually, not allowed to curse or swear or take God's name in vain, but you can use vulgarity. That's how I was raised. So I use vulgarity like a sailor, but that's really, you have to bleep that out. So I just want to, I lost my train of thought. That was my punishment. That I completely lost my
forgetting what you were talking about.
Yeah. About musicians.
Oh yeah, no, I don't want to know because I don't want to not like them.
Oh yeah, you were telling us on your podcast about
Gary Clark Jr. I love him. My son loves him. He's so funny and nice when he plays like the blues in New Orleans, and then all of a sudden the song opened with "I'm so pissed off," and I was like, and there's Alicia Keys going, hey, we got so much love. I'm like, there's no love here. Not a lot of love, honey.
Zero love.
Cultivating hate and all your, all the hashtags are all about.
If this is love, you guys need help.
And it's so funny. One time I went, because I go to the Grammys, because whatever, I don't want to implicate the person who invites me. So I'm just going to say, I don't like anyone to know that because I go there, people are like, oh, she has a podcast where I'm like, don't tell people to listen to her. Next time,
A what, honey?
They're going to arrest me. I know. I mean, that's the thing. I'm just like, dude, no.
Insider.
So, but I do, so I go there every year, and Bruno Mars came out once and just like, started insulting the audience like, oh, you rich white people. Like, first of all, these are not white people. All, it's not like just this bevy of whatever. And Bruno Mars is calling them rich. I'm sorry. But if they made me Michael Jackson and paid me that way, I think I would be nicer about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
They're fomenting. That's the whole thing. Yeah. I can't watch, it's hard to watch movies anymore or even, have the motivation to go to the theater because what movie star do I want to watch for, over an hour after I've watched him or her go get on Twitter or,
Oh yeah,
And I don't think they can survive. Like, that's actually why I started investigating Lori Loughlin's case of the college admissions, because Binkley said, oh, she's a conservative Christian Catholic, whatever. And I was like, oh, I wonder if she even did it or if they just went after her. And that's why. And so it was like a 250-page document. The FBI was just like, I'm just looking up Lori Loughlin. And she was the only one who at least claims innocence. That's how predictable it is, in my opinion. And that in that particular case, it proved it out. But I just think that if they get a whiff of that, if you're an influencer and you're not either a complete clown saying the stuff they want to discredit, but like, I just remember the one that really pissed me off. I used to love to go to Mario Batali's restaurant when I lived in LA, and he started just bad mouthing bankers, rich, whatever. And I'm thinking, isn't that like you just live to serve these guys like truffles and everything? Like, isn't that, aren't you, what are you, what? And I just don't get it. The self-righteous, that thing where, everybody just promotes this kind of hate, whether it's class or race or whatever, and then wants to have the moral high ground, like the bumper sticker, fuck hate. It's like, I don't.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All these resist people. Oh my God. Shout out to the loser who I just saw driving again. Biggest loser bumper sticker I've ever seen. And I just saw her for the second time, but she has a bumper sticker that says Mueller time. Really? Yeah.
That's not going to age well.
Oh, that's right.
It's not aged well now, and she still has it on her car. It's like worse than like the Hillary 2016.
He's paid out for like putting innocent people in jail. Like, the government's paid millions of dollars against stuff that he's done. Like, he should not be anyone's hero.
Bonkers. No. Yeah. Like, you have issues if you think that man's your hero.
Right.
Like,
that's the thing. It's
get friends. Go get friends. Like,
and it's on both sides of the aisle. It's just this, your guy's always right. And the other, it's like, whatever happened to, I mean, ideology's dead in my opinion, but some basic principles of honesty and like just no killing and stealing is like all I really want people to agree on.
Like, let's just get back to basics.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I try to teach my kids. I'm like, if you want to be a libertarian, just remember not to kill people or steal their stuff. And
that is so, the most important. That's so hard for both sides to stick to.
Well, they think there's a gray area.
Yeah. Or like everybody's got their certain list of, well, it's justifiable when, and it's like, well, that reason sucks, and no, it's not.
That guy, Qasem Soleimani, is, first of all, you could, this is what my mother said, he just looked evil. Like, okay, Mom.
I love you, Mom.
So does Christopher Walken, but we don't go shooting him in the face.
Yeah, and people are telling me, but he did this, he did that. I'm like, how do you know? How do you know that person even exists? How do you know those pictures were from a long time ago? Like, maybe we right now could run and do this for an hour and figure it out and get some real information and be like, oh, there's a newspaper with a headline on it in the same room as him, and we know he's alive on this day, whatever. But when people think they know the story, and the answer of how they know is that Fox or CNN told them or Trump tweeted it, I just don't feel like that's a valid, that's just not an exception to thou shalt not kill. That's just not enough for me.
Right.
Very true.
And if you really needed to die, then, you need to strap one on, put some grease on your face, and just get over there and do it yourself. And then see how you're going to, when you go to confession, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, that doesn't count. I'm pretty sure it was him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before I forget, like, on the note of just propaganda generally and how they're starting to more and more, well, I don't know. They've probably always done it, and you guys are both older than me. No disrespect. I'm the baby here.
Both of you.
I'm the baby. But so, the specific way that they're trying to propagandize the masses in telling them about libertarianism and libertarians. Like, so, for example, I was just reminded of in Dirty Dancing when the asshole hands was it baby the Fountainhead. I'm like, oh my God,
Oh
that
my
guy.
gosh. Oh, do I have to go back and watch that? I don't
You
remember.
do.
It's been
You
so long. I
do.
probably saw it when it first
Robbie?
came
Wow,
out.
I did not even think about that.
Yes, go back. And Robbie hands, I guess, baby. He's like, of course, the biggest asshole, and he hands baby a copy of the Fountainhead. And yeah, okay. And
Or
so that's
Mad
like
Men. Have you ever seen Mad Men?
Oh, I
show?
saw Mad Men. Did this, was
There was
Don
like-
Draper one of those?
Yeah,
Like he liked Ayn Rand?
When it wasn't Don Draper, it was his boss. Like I think it was like one of the first 3 seasons, but he the boss of the whole company was like, you really need to read The Fountainhead.
Oh yeah, the guy who didn't wear shoes.
I think so, yeah.
Yes,
And
yes,
I just remember, and he just made it sound like the way he made it look like is everybody who reads Ayn Rand are these materialistic, they love taking advantage of people kind of person.
Yeah, I was just having an email exchange with a super, super smart listener. I just love when people send me stuff that like really makes me think. And he was talking about how irrational, they act like being selfish is irrational. Selfless is irrational, but it's totally not irrational. I mean, how long I've completely defriended for reals people who are selfish and they lose the pleasure of my delicious craft cocktails. So, right. I mean, it would have been in their selfish self-interest to not treat me poorly. And that's everybody rational people tend to know that rationality is not a black and white decision completely out of context, having nothing to do with anything else that's important to you. And the only thing that's important to you isn't necessarily just jamming as many calories into your face as you can or working as little as possible. I mean, everybody here is doing this for nothing, right? We're sharing thoughts we want to think. We want to save our I don't know what to call it, society, structure, family, life, community from
what we're familiar with,
Yeah, from the evil machinations of people who want to exploit it. And there's nothing face stuffing about that. But
not feeling gluttonous about it. Yeah.
No, I mean it's just it's
well,
just
and
not...
it's the idea of like people have in their mind what being selfish means, that you want to take from other people or hoard things and keep other people from having it, or but being selfish doesn't necessarily have to mean that. I mean, the better word would probably be like self-interest.
Yes.
Like you're trying to do something to better yourself, but sometimes bettering yourself means that you're sacrificing so that your husband can just watch his football game, or, you stay home and watch the kids so he can work.
That's the essence of the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. It's a selfish, charitable,
but it helps you in the long run.
It's self-evident. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the way that's the system.
Yeah.
So that to denounce it, to mischaracterize it as being, I think it's quite immoral and not. Ayn Rand wouldn't promote, or that philosophy, whatever, doesn't promote the fundamental like fraud and deception that's required to exploit people out of the just rewards of their work.
Right.
And they just forget that it's not, that it's always couched in fraud and deceit.
Yes.
When it's in the system, when it's systematic instead of like somebody climbing in your window and stealing your stuff. The system, the evil corporate guy, like even John D. Rockefeller, they call them robber barons, whatever. They were robber barons. John D. Rockefeller used, I believe, if what I've read is correct, used government, captive government, corrupt government to deny people their rights to compete, to protect their own private property, stuff like that. That's how it got out of control, because regular fundamental laws that we had were not, it was because that arching power was co-opted and corrupted, as it inevitably will be.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing I see a lot of. Like I have a friend who's a liberal, and she always gets on my case about how like she could never be a libertarian because we like corporations too much. And it makes me just want to rip my hair out, because I don't know how many times I've explained it to her, how corporations is not what we are in favor of. Like many of times corporations are corporations because they lobby government for certain benefits. And that's not what, I mean, we would much rather government not to be involved at all. And so, I was trying to explain, how, we can be pro-capitalist without being corporatist,
Yeah, I call it the corpo-governmental continuum. It's not mom and pop entrepreneurship. It's not a free market system at all. I mean, I've even toyed with the idea. I'd have to kind of think more about it, but that the limited liability corporation maybe isn't a good thing. Like you don't actually have to have it, especially as an anarcho-capitalist, you wouldn't have it. There is no, I mean, you screw somebody over, you're probably going to pay for it and not be able to hide behind the shield of documents of incorporation.
Yeah.
So I think that to hold people personally responsible for their actions inside the office or out is totally valid. And that would solve a lot of problems.
Right.
It certainly would solve her problem.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking the other day, because I read this book a long time ago called it's a fictional book, but it's kind of based on like the beginnings of New York City and the industrial revolution sort of hit, and all these immigrants are flooding into the city to work in sweatshops and things like that. And I'm thinking maybe the 1920s, there was like this big fire that broke out in a shirt factory, and all these women had to jump from the top of the building to their death because the guy who owned the factory locked the door so they couldn't leave, and that was keep the productivity up. And that not when it was on fire, but that's just what he did. Yeah, that's just what he did to keep them from leaving. Right. Okay. And they would stay, and then he would unlock it at the end of their shift or whatever. But the fire broke out and nobody could get there to unlock the door. So all these women had to jump from the top floor to their death or die in a fire. So a lot of liberals will say, well, that's where we had to get government involved into business because somebody had to hold these people accountable and make sure they're treating these people right. And then, of course, all the children that were probably, exploited and used in these types of situations too. So we also need to make sure that kids can't work anymore.
And
they need to go to school. Yeah. They need to go to school. We don't need to have kids working in sweatshops and chimney sweeps. And
I would say a couple of things. First of all, I think that the basic original premise that people miss, and I believe I've toyed with the idea that it came from the plague, the Black Plague. Plague wiped out all the labor. And I think, if I've got my timeline right, capitalism was kind of just emerging at the time to be able to really cordon off large amounts of surplus wealth to invest in something that was very efficient, or even just feudalism where you'd have a farm that needed a lot of people. They needed labor, and they would capture people, imprison people to be the labor. Labor was so valuable. And I think that somewhere along the line, they just were like, we can never let that happen again. Not that there was a continuous they, although there is an argument that there was a continuous they, but that they're always afraid that labor will understand its own power. And in a free society, I think labor would, and you would never work in that guy's factory, and the guy next door could build a factory that did not lock the doors, and he would get all the people with self-respect, and he could pick and choose who he wanted. He could just pick the people who will work and give them an extra dime or whatever. And as far as it's very simple to just, that's why, so everyone's like, women make less for the same pay. Women are the majority of workforce. Women are the majority of the workforce now, which is exactly what would happen. I don't think that's why it's happening, but that is what would happen if women did make less for the same pay. Only women would get jobs till all the jobs were given to women, and then the wages would clear wherever. You just can't. I always said, if they didn't have bank charters when me and every other woman got fired from a place I worked in, we would have run across the street and opened Chick Bank. We work harder for less. But we couldn't.
Chick Bank.
But we couldn't because they had all the charters. The guys who fired me were the guys who were playing golf with the guys who had the keys to the city. I mean, there was just no hope for it. And I will say for the kids, I mean, I think in many countries you can see in the here and now that people who are starving and have like worms in their feet and stuff, I'm not saying they have good conditions in those places because they too have corrupt government that goes in there and like they say that our aid goes to support like warlords or people who will promote it has nothing to do with
the poor people.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with what they say at all. It's simply a political. They take the money just buy a political thing. And those guys have to go out of their way to keep people down who would compete with their like outsized profits. I mean, that's what it is, because the profits would always go down to economic zero because new things would pop up. But in a free society, kids working is a benefit to them. I used to love to get to be, the runner. I had 8 brothers and sisters, and I was the baby. And they would just give me $1. And if I ran, the house was so small that the fridge couldn't fit in the kitchen. So it was in the basement. And my sister's room was on the top floor. So I would have to go all the way down. And it was super scary. Oh. So I'd go, it was dark. So I had to go all the way down and get her ice cream. But I would get $1 and a bowl of ice cream. Oh, I mean, right? I was an urchin. And then some cop came in and said, you can't do that. She's a kid. No, that's not true. But if it had happened, it would have been devastating for everyone.
Yeah, because I was thinking of like, when I've been to India and I've been to like the really poor parts of India, and we did like a medical mission there. And I remember lots of the kids would work. I mean, they would be rag pickers. They would beg on the streets. They would do odd little jobs here and there to earn some money because, many times like one or both of their parents were sick and they can't work. And if they don't work, then nobody eats. So if they had a law, which they probably do in India now that I think about it, but a law would prevent them from being able to even provide for their family.
All this is about is making food and making people to eat the food. That is life. You make food, you eat the food, you have babies, you feed them, they make food, they eat the food. I mean, that's it, right? And it's fun. I love it. I'm just saying that that's what it is. So you have to just get basic about, do you treat each other decently? Then you have like religion. When you think about it, billions of people belong to religions where they voluntarily pay taxes, not taxes, but they voluntarily give welfare. And they behave themselves. That's the whole essence of religion is voluntarism. I'm not advocating and I'm not saying like, oh, we should all whatever. I'm just saying there is a moral imperative. I believe there's a moral imperative that drives us, and it's rational. It's this thing where we're all in it together. It's like an insurance policy. And if we all take care of each other, then if one of us gets sick or whatever, like we can all, it makes sense for us to structure ourselves this way. But even in like the 50s, I know old movies aren't the way to do it, but I remember like my parents kind of skipped they're like a little bit too old for me generationally. And there were real standards for morality as a businessman. And you'd want to work with the guy. Like you'd be like, you have to get a job there. Like everybody wants to work at that guy's place because he's a fair person and he's honest and like people cared about reputation. The fact that was a concept, clearly it had a meaning. And that, so if this guy's going to lock that door, my guess is the husbands of those women would burn his house down with him in it. Yeah. Right. And then he deserves that.
I think, and I don't know for sure, but I do think that, I think he got something happened to him, and I don't remember what it was in the book, but I do remember like that he basically was pulled out in the street and beat up or something like that.
I mean, that's what would happen. You can't, and maybe people make mistakes, but the state makes mistakes. Do you ever see like the rolls of DNA evidence that exonerate people who were killed by the state? So
just all the rape kits that never get tested.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole thing right there. The states, there's no justice for any of those rape victims.
Right.
Or the people accused even.
I don't usually go to this place, but I mean, I seriously wonder Because I respect people. A lot of people work for the government, teachers, people, cops, a lot of people work for the government. You can't just be like, they all suck, whatever. But I think there's a culture in the cops where, in some places anyway, they're not really even trying. Like, that's not what it's about. And the basic premise, the basic argument that people have with me, with us, is that, well, what would you do without the cops? And I'm like, I'm not sure they're actually doing what you think they're doing. And now I was like, my father always told us never to call the cops because it was rude. Like, if you don't have the cojones, the courage to go tell your neighbor that his music is too loud, you're going to hide behind a cop. He just didn't like it. It was just poor character. But I was like, let me just tell the kids to call the cops. I can't stand on principle. I have children. It's for the children. And now my rational self-interest, I'm like, don't ever call the cops because they're going to bring a gun and they don't care what's right or wrong, and they will never have to answer for that. Well, I'm not saying they don't care what's right or wrong. They aren't going to suss out the facts if it's a risk to themselves, because that is how they are trained. So they're going to bring a gun, and if the dog barks too loud, or my son has Down syndrome, and once someone did call the cops, he ran away, and the cops were looking for him in the woods, and I hear him in the woods saying, "Don't come any closer, I have a stick." And I was like, oh, holy God in heaven, do not. I was just like, I told the guy, I went. I was like, the cops were there with their hands on the guns. So I was like, I'm going to him. And they're like, don't go. I was like, I'm going. Shoot me in the back if you have to, but no way am I letting this hysterical kid freak you guys out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is that, I mean, my last hope is that, or the only thing I could say in defense of the system as that works, some places they're good, but that maybe it is a deterrent, that it is a deterrent that somebody would call the cops. I mean, burglaries, like, we do get the cops come around for burglaries and stuff, and they catch them, and people have their cameras, and they do catch them, and perhaps that deters. I'm not sure it really does deter, because there's a lot of burglaries around here. But, I don't know if the deterrent, I haven't debunked the deterrent theory yet, but everything else I'm pretty much done with.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, especially with like the cop situation, I feel like it's changed a lot, because when I was a therapist and I worked in a psychiatric hospital, I worked with kids and I worked with families a lot. And I remember, families having to call the police because their kid ran away, or they were suicidal, or they were acting out and they thought they might be a danger to somebody. And I just remember back then I had a lot of respect for the police, because they would de-escalate situations and bring these people into the hospital. But I just, as I worked there for about 7 years, so about towards the end of that time, I remember hearing more stories of I remember a story about of a young 20-year-old schizophrenic kid. He smoked some marijuana, and it made if you're schizophrenic, don't smoke marijuana. It will make you crazy. And it made him crazy, and he started acting out, and all of a sudden the cops showed up, and then he was just out of his mind, and they beat him up so bad that he had to spend I don't know how long in the hospital. But his mom told me they broke basically one side of his face was caved in from being hit so much.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just a schizophrenic kid.
Yeah, I think it is getting worse. And my son has Down syndrome, and I read a couple of years ago a story of they were trying to restrain a kid with Down syndrome, and they did end up killing him. But I have had mixed. I have to say, for the record, I have had mixed experiences. So that I have had a couple of times when they did de-escalate the situation, but mostly not. I have to say, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's an escalation in the wrong direction.
I remember at the hospital that I worked at, we really tried not to have to hospitalize kids with Down syndrome, because we just weren't, our staffing wasn't for that type of patient.
It's hard. Yeah.
And because,
my son wanted to, he's like, I hate IV was the IV. And he just wanted to pull it out of his arm. And eventually I had to tell them to just take it out. And they're just like, but it's not finished yet. It's like, just take it the fuck out.
Well, I was thinking that in my experience is they just need to have those types of patients need to be around familiar environments, around family or friends. And when you're in the hospital, they can't be with their family overnight and things like that. I remember but we had this one kid that for some reason he stayed for like one night, and I remember we had like all the staff had to surround him because he was starting to just get real worked up and he couldn't calm himself down. And I was like, guys, get away from him. Like, he's scared, and you guys circling him is making him act out. Like it never, because they just don't know.
And this, I will say, I noticed with the schooling, because he goes to public school, and I've noticed with the institutional things, like as you get more centrally controlled, as you get more systematized, which is what the sustainable thing I think is about, like systems, you really lose control of any ability to tailor or to love. You know, that's the thing. It all comes down to treating others. Like this idea that we're hyper rational assholes is it's not valid, because it's the individualism that allows for actual love in the, you know, that golden rule kind of love, which is what we need and what we want, because for the grace of God, go I. You know, I try to tell my other kids, I'm like, hey man, you could have been that kid. So you have to pay it forward a little bit, you know, or God will curse you. Sorry, no.
He will spite you.
But there is definitely some truth to that. And that's one of the reasons why I left working in that environment, because it was becoming more and more run by the state. They just shut down the state hospital. And so we were like the state psychiatric hospital. So that meant more visits from JCO, you know, more CMS visits, and more. Then all of a sudden we had all these new rules and things we had to follow. It just seemed very rigid, and it just I didn't go to school for that.
Yeah, and it doesn't get better. And the more they take out of your hands your ability to judge, and they do that because they'll say this one guy locked the door and those people jumped out the windows, and they'll tailor laws to like that person. Whatever. Meanwhile, there's so much deadweight loss from that. There's so much actual damage done, but they say they follow the process, they follow protocol, and then there is no recourse. So like with medical malpractice, I'm sure you know, all you have to do is follow what the guidelines are. You don't there's no assessing your motives, your judgment, nothing. Not that I think people should be on the line like that. You're doing your best, presumably, but this idea that it's really just that right is the same as authority, and it doesn't go past that. I'm a little afraid that I didn't answer your questions about the 2020 election. You were like, I'm like,
you know what? Well, so what's more important than the 2020 election, and what's kind of like a theme that covers everything we were just talking about, and something that can go back to what we started our show with is like, so one of the things that when the state comes in and takes over and is the monopoly of these areas, like the policing, the fire department, things that are, I'm starting to call like the state's shiny objects, like, well, look at this, and like, you need this, or else. But it's like, so the further and further we get away from like privatization of everything, you know, the state takes away our imagination. It like really limits us, and thinking of alternative ways, methods, problem solving. None of it is on us as individuals. It's always somebody else's fault, somebody else's responsibility. And so now we're seeing more and more of that with healthcare. And so it's like what we were saying in the beginning, like how important, like, forget being wealthy, it's all about being healthy. And it's like, so there's so much that goes into just an individual's health. And like, if everybody was just a little bit more self-aware, conscientious towards themselves. And
this goes to the gun control thing, where when people had guns, they knew how to use guns, and it was very empowering. This is very disempowering, and disempowerment in that way, as well as like stifling your creativity, creates unhealth. Mental unhealth, like, creates that. And then you become the person they're telling you that you are, that they were built this whole structure to approach. But we became that person because they built it. They built the cages and then we just got in them, but we weren't like that.
It's really sad, actually, when you put it that way.
Because the Wild West was not wild.
No. Yeah.
No.
But they make it seem that way for sure in all the movies. And
Westworld.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I used to love that show, but it's like, it feels immoral to watch it.
Yeah.
Like if your innermost desire is to rape people and murder people. I mean, it's really,
I really liked first season.
That.
And I thought it was like interesting, like from the libertarian angle, like, of course you're on the side of these robots that are gaining consciousness and they're like, like, I'm not going to take this no more, human. Right. You evil humans, you Clintons. The Clintons are at the Westworld. Really?
Yeah, that's true.
But then second season got all really weird.
Yeah, and then they all just turned into murder
typical HBO ruined show, and too bad.
First season of Deadwood was really, really, really great. First season of Deadwood. It's like Shakespeare.
I'll have to try it. I have to watch
just
that.
Just throwing it out there.
Okay.
Non sequitur, but like it was the finest television ever made.
Good.
Just to drag you into it. Well, I didn't mean to make your point negative. I didn't mean to make your point negative.
No, I mean it is kind of, my point was
it is negative. Yeah,
it is negative. It is negative. Like,
but I feel like we can. That health is that. Well, after I read that Nancy Turner Banks book, and her, I think maybe I'm wrong. Maybe girls can answer me this. That if you have that we can protect ourselves from some of these things that make us sick in the society with. Minerals and micronutrients and stuff. I feel like that has to be true, but maybe it's not.
I'm really into essential oils.
Oh, really? So that's a body-mind connection thing, right?
Yeah.
They all talk about like frequency, vibe.
Oh, yeah.
I do think, there's something to energy, what we put out, what we create within us, and, what's going to come back to us. Mm-hmm. I think there's a certain degree of like the heightened awareness, and even I don't know. So like I take a lot of different essential oils as supplements, and then just throughout my day I diffuse. There's chemicals in there, and it's like actual little molecules that do something to your brain, and it's just. Oh,
I have lots of molecules that do stuff to your brain. Like
right,
I'm right there.
We need
with
all
you,
that,
Dave.
right?
No, it's just my cocktails. I don't do anything crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, acid or anything.
So it's one of those things where I think like paying that much attention to yourself ends up reflecting in better health overall. Yeah. And so, I'm not curing cancer. I don't have cancer. I might be. I don't know.
In you. Like that's what I'm saying. Like
who knows? Yeah, exactly. I mean, you never know. But I think like there's something about it's that mind body connection. It's like getting to know yourself, like personality wise, physically. I totally think even
getting to know, like being aware of how your body actually works. And if it's not working right, you should pay attention.
You should know.
Exactly. But if it is working right, you might not want to, like, I'm not a big fan of getting a lot of preventive diagnostic stuff that involves imaging. And I can't, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't. My mother's 91 and her mother lived till 95. And she said that her mother, last time she saw a doctor was at her house when she delivered her last child, like 60 years before she had no teeth. She lived on ringdings and Bailey's Irish cream, which I thought was a pretty good combination.
Yeah. I feel like that sounds like a good cocktail inspiration.
I know. Yeah. You know what? I should make the Molly Neenahan. I'm on it.
Yep. Well, that sounds great. I don't know. We should probably try and wrap up. It is a school night / work night, and I'm fragile at this stage.
Yes, I know. You guys worked all day. It's late.
Oh man. Yeah. I've talked to way too many people today. I've sent way too many emails, and it's amazing that I still like most people.
Lucid. What diffusing essential oil did you use to rejuvenate yourself?
Oh, what got me through today included some bergamot and lime, and let's see, some patchouli to keep me grounded. Something herbal. I can't remember what else I did. Oh, tea tree boundaries, and also tea tree is good for immune support, and it's an antibacterial.
I love tea tree.
The FDA is going to come after me.
What do you do with it?
Diffuse it.
Oh.
Yeah. So you want to get like the best quality oils that you can get, and then so there's nothing else gunky in them. Pop them in the diffuser, and I just like shut my office door and I soak it all in. And lavender, because who doesn't need lavender?
Are into candles, and I kind of can't sleep at night because they're lighting candles.
Oh yeah,
but they like the smell, and I
would
feel like
try diffusing, because then they either turn off after a certain amount of time, or they turn off when they're empty, and there's no open flame.
All right.
Yeah, we can talk.
All right, I'll think about it. I'm really on this thing where I never want to see a doctor again for as long as I live.
I went to the doctor, but also I never want to go see one personally.
Like, I'm going to go to the doctor. I think I should have a doctor. So I went to the doctor, and she immediately, I didn't even know this chick. And she wanted to cut open my veins and insert pathogenic DNA immediately in the form of a whooping cough vaccine. You don't want to get whooping cough. I'm like, trust me, babe.
Don't think it was
not getting whooping cough.
Not getting whooping cough.
But then she said shingles, and I was like, I definitely don't want shingles. But I couldn't ask her the question, like, am I more or less likely to get shingles if I get the shingles vaccine? Like, I don't want shingles so much that I don't think I want to. But my mother, who doesn't do anything ever, she is anti any kind of medical intervention. She's like, you better get that shingles vaccine. You don't want shingles. I mean, that is going to slow you down. It's like, okay.
I've only seen it ever in people who are like really like their immune system is very compromised. Like we'll see a lot of cancer patients also get shingles like after chemotherapy or something like that.
Really?
But I don't know.
Immunocompromised.
Yeah, I don't know if you really need to worry about that. And if you've had like I never got I got chicken pox. I never got the vaccine.
Yeah, I got chicken pox.
So I don't. Like, apparently, like, I am susceptible to getting shingles later on. So, I don't know.
I thought it was a little premature.
Yeah.
I was like, I think you have to be a little older. I don't know. She did have my birthday. We'll see.
I don't know.
We'll see. Yes, we'll talk. Keep me posted. I'll tell you all the horrible things that are happening in the world, and you can tell me how to get over
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah. That's another thing. Stress will also compromise your immune system, so got to keep that in check. However,
exercise
works best for you all.
Meditation.
Sleep. You need to sleep.
I love sleep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's good. It's the best.
It's a combination of everything.
It really is. It's part of how the system, like your own body system, keeps functioning. On that note, as my functioning declines, like
it's
right,
a great note.
it's going out. Like I'm about to.
Let's do it. Let's go sleep.
Yes, we're gonna go to sleep. So, all you Vixies listening, thanks for stopping in. Monica, you want to plug anything before we sign off?
I have a radio show on terrestrial radio called the Monica Perez Show, which is fun to hear what they let out there on the airwaves.
Amazing.
But I actually believe that I am performing a service that I do this daily podcast. It's 30 minutes a day called the Drive Time News Blast, but it's under the banner of the Propaganda Report. Any place you listen to your podcast, 30 minutes every afternoon of what happened that day without, from a perspective of truth, liberty, and justice. True justice.
Yes.
Amen. All right. And then everybody, you know where to find us. We've said it enough times and butchered it enough times, but we'll catch you on Instagram because that's where we hang. And we'll see you next time.
Podcatchers, yeah.
Yeah, you'll find us everywhere. Voluntary Vixens. And so we'll see you next time. But in the meantime, keep it sane, keep it peaceful, keep it voluntary.